Hello everyone, today we recommend a heartwarming and touching movie, Heidi and Grandpa. This movie has won the hearts of countless viewers with its pure Alpine scenery, sincere characters and deep philosophy of life. It has won the hearts of countless viewers. The innocent Heidi suffers a family tragedy. Her aunt has no choice but to send Heidi to her grandfather, who lives in the Alps. Grandpa is a lonely, cold-hearted old man. He was wary of the outside world. He was very resentful of Heidi's arrival. He went to his room alone and locked the door. Heidi took her bags and went into the sheepfold, hiding in the shadows. Grandpa felt a little guilty. Heidi spent a stormy night with the sheep. Early in the morning, Heidi saw Grandpa coming to the sheep pen and greeted him. Grandpa gave Heidi a spoonful of goat's milk after milking the goat. Heidi quickly drank the milk. On this day, Grandpa brought Heidi to the pastor. The pastor first gave Heidi a thorough examination. Then the pastor told Grandpa that the baby was healthy, but there was no suitable family. If he couldn't find a suitable home, he'd have to go to an orphanage. Heidi had to go back home with her grandfather. Heidi asked Grandpa where she was staying today. Grandpa told Heidi she could choose any place she wanted. Heidi was happy to enter Grandpa's house for the first time. There was only one bed and one chair in Grandpa's room. Heidi didn't know where she was going to sleep. Heidi saw a staircase. Heidi happily went up to the second floor. The second floor was full of weeds. Heidi happily jumped on the weeds. Heidi happily asked Grandpa if she could sleep here. Grandpa said yes. Early in the morning, Heidi was awakened by the sound of sheep herding. Heidi drank a bowl of goat's milk and washed her face in the spring water. She took the goats and joined Peter's herd. Heidi and Peter had fun herding goats in the Alps. From then on, Heidi had a good friend, Peter. Heidi saw Peter beating the goats. Heidi said, "Peter, if you don't beat the goats again, I'll give you half of the food." Peter happily agreed. Peter told Heidi not to tell your grandfather because people in the village say he killed a man. At home, Heidi was a little afraid of her grandfather. Grandpa knew Peter must have said something behind her back. Grandpa told Heidi to believe what she saw. Heidi was so happy that she gave him a kiss. Heidi's kiss touched Grandpa's heart, and he decided to do something for Heidi. When Heidi came back from herding the sheep, she saw the chair that Grandpa had made for Heidi. Heidi realized that she wouldn't have to go to the orphanage. One day Peter told Heidi that he was going to school and wouldn't be tending the sheep for the whole winter. Heidi was a little sad. Heidi told Grandpa she wanted to go to school too. Grandpa said mountain children didn't need to go to school. Winter came and snow covered the Alps. Grandpa carved an eagle for Heidi. Heidi looked out the window and told Grandpa she wanted to go to Peter. To make Heidi happy, Grandpa got out his sleigh and took Heidi down the mountain. Heidi was so happy to ride in Grandpa's sleigh. Peter's grandmother welcomed Heidi. Heidi felt sorry for Peter's grandmother, who was blind. Heidi and Peter hugged each other warmly. At dinner, Heidi gave Peter's grandmother some of her bread. Peter's grandmother said she couldn't eat hard food because of her teeth. In the evening, Grandpa came to take Heidi home. Lying on Grandpa's back, thinking of Peter's grandmother, Heidi felt lucky to be with her grandfather. Another spring Heidi and came again. She said she'd found a nice family in the city for Heidi to stay with. She wanted to take Heidi with her. Heidi's grandfather refused. He had gotten used to Heidi's life, but the aunt tricked her into taking her away. Heidi was sent to a rich man's house. Clara shook Heidi's hand in a friendly manner. It was clear she welcomed Hildy with open arms. The aunt took the housekeeper's money and left quietly. In fact, Hildy had been sold to the family by her wicked aunt. Touching the fluffy bread, Heidi thought of Peter's grandmother. Heidi secretly hid a loaf of bread. The teacher gave Heidi a book to read aloud. Heidi said she didn't know any of the words. Grandpa said mountain children didn't need to read. Clara showed Heidi a picture of her mother. Heidi said your mother was beautiful. Clara was devastated by her mother's unexpected death. She couldn't stand up ever since. Hildy asked the butler to open the window. She wanted to see her grandfather's mountains. From the window, all Hildy could see were the Alps. The butler said that the tall buildings of the church in the distance might be able to see the mountains. Heidi secretly pushed Clara into the street. Clara was happy to be out of the house for a while. Outside the church, Clara told Hildy to go up alone and wait here. Heidi still couldn't see the mountain from up there. She knew her grandfather was far away. Hildy changed into her own clothes and said goodbye to Clara. He was going to find his grandfather in the mountains. The housekeeper stopped Hildy. Heidi realized that her aunt had lied to her. When she saw Clara's sadness, Hildy stayed. Soon after, Clara's father and grandmother returned. The housekeeper told the master about Hildy's situation. Clara's grandmother decided to see for herself. Grandma told Heidi the story of the lost goat. Heidi wanted to know the end of the story. Grandma encouraged Hildy to learn to read on her own. Slowly, Heidi learned to read on her own. One night, Heidi stood in the doorway and stared into the distance. The doctor realized that Heidi was sleepwalking. The doctor talked to Heidi and found that Heidi was suffering from a severe case of homesickness. The doctor suggested that Heidi be sent back to the mountains or her condition would get worse. Dad told Clara about Heidi's condition and decided to send Heidi away. Clara, who didn't want Heidi to leave, was furious. She told Heidi she never wanted to see her again. Clara shut herself up in her room. The butler made Heidi lots of fluffy bread. Heidi left Clara her eagle, hoping to see her again someday. The butler put Heidi on the coach to the mountains. On the way back, Heidi met Peter. Heidi gave Peter's grandmother some fluffy bread. Grandpa, who was working, seemed to hear Heidi's voice again. Heidi had really come back. Heidi was finally back with Grandpa. Heidi and Peter were able to herd the sheep again. Winter came. Grandpa moved to a house down the hill to make it easier for Heidi to go to school. Heidi learned to write and wrote to Clara often, hoping she would come to visit her in the mountains. Touching the eagle in her hand, Clara regretted not saying goodbye to Heidi. Grandma took Clara to the Alps. Clara was very happy to see Heidi again. Grandma decided to let Clara stay in the mountains for a while. Heidi and Clara would sleep in the haystacks at night. They drank goat's milk and ate hard bread. They would make wishes on shooting stars. Peter was jealous of the loss of his companion. Peter secretly pushed Clara's wheelchair downhill. Grandpa Peter, watching from the hillside, realized that Peter had stolen the wheelchair. Grandpa carried Clara on his back to graze the sheep. Sitting on a rock, Clara smiled at the beauty of the mountain. A butterfly fell on Clara's foot. She tried to touch it. The butterfly flew away. As the butterfly flew away, Clara stood up unexpectedly. Heidi and Peter supported Clara as she tried to walk on her own. It wasn't long before Clara could walk on her own. Clara's father and grandmother came to the mountains to see Clara walking on her own. The father was thrilled. Grandma gave Heidi a book. Heidi thought it was a storybook. When she opened it, there was not a word in it. Grandma gave Heidi a pen. Heidi was expected to write her own beautiful story. On the hill, Heidi began to write her own story in the book. At the end of the story, Heidi opened her arms and smiled happily.